Hi again, it's Jason from Fraser Valley Rose Farm. I'm back with my month-by-month series of rose care videos, this one for the month of June, and this is peak bloom here on the farm. And in many North American climates, this is when you have the most color from your roses. Some people might be inclined to think of this as the finish line of the hobby, where you get what you want, you can just sit back and relax and enjoy the sight and smell of your roses, but my point would be enjoy them more intimately than that by deadheading them, pruning them, and extending that season. This doesn't have to be the end of the season. This can be just the beginning of a long and productive rose growing season. Let's go have a look at what we would do right now. So the idea of deadheading is just to remove the spent blooms and give that energy back to the roses so they can bloom again quickly. So as an example, this is a freshly opened bloom, so is this one here. But having a look at this one here, and I'll pull it forward for you, you'll note that it's starting to look a little bit blousy, a little bit like the petals are going to drop off of it easily. That's a candidate for deadheading at this point, even though it is colorful on the shrub. Also, this one here has fully dropped its petals, so the other one was probably just a day or two behind that. The advantage of getting that off quickly is it sends the signal back to the shrub to bloom straight away again. So in the previous example, you saw me plucking it off by hand one by one, but on a cluster flowering rose like this one here, once it's done with that flush, it's probably just going to be easier to go back below the flush of flowers and pick off the whole cluster just at once. I've done a recent video on the whys and hows of deadheading. I'm going to refer you to that video right now, and now I want to talk a little bit about deeper structural pruning that we might do at this time of year. Let me tell you about this rose here. This is a Baie de Cluny, a large hybrid tea rose that bloomed out in this case all the way up here at 8 feet tall. Partly due to neglect on my part, I just didn't get that far to this end of the rose field when I was doing my spring pruning. Now, happy accident, I would say. It bloomed out gloriously. I sold a lot of roses because of how beautifully this one presented, but the thing is, I can't let it keep on growing upwards. Blooming 8 feet tall now means that it might bloom 9 feet or 10 feet tall in the future, and we've all seen neglected hybrid teas that go up 10 or 12 feet tall. So I need to correct the shape and size of this shrub now, and I'm going to do it after its first flush of blooms, which means I will be introducing a bit of a long recovery time, but I still expect to get more blooms from this later in the summer, so I'm going to do a correction to the size of this rose. Here it is with nothing left above 3 feet for sure. And is this going to recover from that heavier pruning? Well, yes, emphatically, I think, because this is a well-established and otherwise healthy rose, a pruning in the middle of the growing season here, and it should recover from it just fine. Another reason I might consider pruning at this time of year, a heavier pruning, is for black spot. Now here's an example of a rose I know comes down with black spot. It's a hybrid perpetual rose called Baron Gerard de Laine, and you're going to see those beautiful white edges on its petals. It's really well known for that. Unfortunately, it's also well known for picking up a lot of black spot on its leaves, and because I know I'm going to be fighting with that throughout the season, it's something that I'm going to consider doing a preemptive prune, and I'm going to do it right about now when I see that a lot of its first blooms here are faded, and I just want to get that black spot out of the center of the shrub before it progresses and makes it hard for later in the year. Here is the shrub finished pruning and with a fighting chance to go forward with clean foliage into the next flush. So don't be afraid to take that sacrifice play now in order to get yourself some color later on. You can enjoy that first flush, but be ready to pull the trigger when you see black spot moving in. And of course, still plenty of color to enjoy elsewhere in the garden. This rose here, this is Eden, was featured in my February video as the one that I fed. So this is the section on feeding and fertilizing. And what I gave to this, because it was a large climber, was 2 cups of alfalfa first thing in the season. And then you can repeat with 1 or 2 cups every 6 to 8 weeks as you go forward. Did it succeed? Yeah, it gave me a nice big flush of flowers here, healthy green looking leaves. And if you look at the top here, you can even see extra energy for these red shoots coming up the top there. So I would say this has succeeded in giving it the right balance of food without having to resort to a whole ton of chemical fertilizing. If I did feel like it was a little short and I need to give it a fast burst of nutrients, I could resort to liquid feeding either with fish fertilizer or with a balanced NPK fertilizer, but it doesn't seem necessary in this case, so why change what is working just fine? I will always take the opportunity this time of year to remind gardeners about the importance of regular water for your roses in getting that size of bloom, particularly in the repeat flowering. My first flush is going to come through it just fine, but we've just had our first week without any rainfall here, and I know that if I don't get out here and water these roses sometime soon, the second flush, the recovery flush, is not going to be as impressive. Now, I wish I could give you some kind of a guideline saying, well, you need 2 gallons of water per rose per week or something along those lines, but I really can't. It actually depends a lot on the soil that you have, on the climate that you have, on the temperatures, on how your roses grow. I mean, it's so variable. The best thing I can say to you is look for those signs. Obviously, smaller blooms is one thing, but also a yellowing of the leaves low down and inside on the plant can be a sign of dryness. And if all else fails, get down there, dig around the soil, get down beside the plant, maybe a foot away, and dig down by a foot and just see how is the soil moisture. If you don't have soil moisture there, the plant can't find it and it can't give you big blooms the second time around. As for pests and disease, I just want to reiterate about black spot, and I'm going to give you an example of this rose here. This is Variegata di Bologna, which I love as a rose. Look at those striped blooms, so striking and photogenic, and I've used those photos many times. But I'm panning over to the left here to show you just how bad it is for black spot. It's a Bourbon rose, which makes it very, very vulnerable, just genetically so. I'd say, as a rule of thumb around my garden, and at this point in the season, probably 70% of my roses are doing just fine. Probably little to no sign of black spot. Then I have a few, like the ones I mentioned there. I had Baron Gerard de Laine, and I also had Regelda that was showing some signs of black spot. And now this one here, I'm going to say, is hopeless. And hopeless insofar as I think I'm actually going to remove the whole plant from the garden. It might be making too much of the point that black spot can spread between plants, but honestly, I just don't want to fight it anymore with this plant. Not when I have Ferdinand Pichard in another part of the garden that looks quite similar and suffers from black spot an awful lot less. Talking about propagation now, and one of the common questions I get is, what is the right timing for your propagation? Taking cuttings from your roses, putting them under humidity domes or the milk jug like I demonstrated last year in a video. I'll link for technique my videos up here, but for timing I can answer that right here, and the answer is when your rose is in bloom, it's showing that it has mature stems just below those blooms. Now, if you'd prefer, maybe wait until after it blooms. It's still in the right stage, roughly speaking, and you can look at stems like this and cut down a little bit further, and there you go. You can see the spent bloom on the top, but right down here is exactly the firmness of stem that I like for my semi-hardwood cuttings. So in that case, I'm going to take a cut right here below a node. That's where a leaf came out. I'm going to take a cut here above a leaf, and then I'm just going to trim off some excess leaves and put that underneath humidity just to give it a chance so it doesn't dry out with a little bit of rooting hormone. Again, I'll review the technique in other videos that I'll link here, but the timing, right now. Well, I always like to finish out these plant care videos by the month with a highlight of a rose, and this one here is called Fellowship. It's also marketed under the name Livin' Easy, and nothing in my garden looks quite so good as this, and it lives up to that name, Livin' Easy, insofar as it is just a very easy rose to make look good. You just give it a good cut down low, it flushes up to this. If you leave it a little higher, it'll flush a little bit higher. So you basically determine with your initial pruning how high you want this rose to be, but in terms of color, there's almost nothing that can compare to it in terms of just how much it blooms repeatedly, big flushes, very reliable, excellent rose for the garden. All right, that's all I had for you today on how to care for your roses in the month of June. Please drop any questions down below the video. I'll see what I can do to help.